We will continue our discussion of the French masters, especially with reference to Robert Bresson. And yesterday we were discussing Pickpocket, his most famous and well known work. So let us revise the key elements in Bresson. So Bresson, who has had a very far reaching influence on directors who followed him, as well as directors of the new Hollywood period, and yesterday we did refer to Martin Scorsese and Paul Schrader. So key features are, one is the strong spiritual element in all his works, the moral force in his works, the spareness. He reduces the settings, the music, and of course the dramatic emphasis on acting. So there is no melodrama at all. Those are the key features we have to remember. All these things, the spiritual element, the sparseness, they lead to a certain kind of an emotional force to Bresson's works. And of course there is this sense of metonymy. In Pickpocket there are several close up shots of hands where people are involved in pickpocketing, and all that we get to see are close up shots of their hands, and this is a recurring motif in most of Bresson's works. So exchanging looks, close ups of hands, eyes, okay. This becomes a very repeated feature in Bresson's work. Now talking about spiritual element, most of his works, almost all of his works focus on seeking redemption in a hopelessly corrupt world. As yesterday we were discussing, Bresson's works raise moral questions. Will we be judged, and by what law? And again Bresson is a highly or existentialist in his approach. For him the world is essentially an absurdist, meaningless place. So these are the key features, these are the philosophies that we have to remember while discussing Bresson. And yesterday we had already talked about Pickpocket in some detail. Today we will discuss A Man Escaped and O Hazard Balthazar. A Man Escaped 1956 is again an extension of Bresson's minimalistic style. There is a man who is imprisoned for a very petty crime, and most of the time he is behind bars, locked up in a very small cell. Much of the action takes place in a cell. And then again we find Bresson's theory of the cinematograph, non-professionals giving de-dramatized performances and yet yielding a very unique emotional force to the works. Do you remember what we meant yesterday by non-professionals giving de-dramatized performances? What was it? It just meant that actors were stripped of emotions. Anyway, he would cast only people who were not trained. Remember that? Yes, I am talking to you. Yes, you remember that he would cast people who were not trained actors, who were not in the profession of acting, and still with those actors also he would make. And how would you strip people of emotions? He would make them rehearse repeatedly, exhaust them, wear them off, and that would drain them of all their energy and emotions, and then he would shoot. This was a technique which was also made common by Carl Dreyer. Remember, we were yesterday discussing Paul Schrader's book, focusing on Ozu, Dreyer and Bresson. Paul Schrader has written a classic, a seminal book, the director of the screenwriter for taxi driver. He has written a book on Ozu, Dreyer and Bresson. If you read that, you will understand their techniques, and there is something which is very common in these directors. So, you can again if you look at some of the stills from A Man Escaped, you will understand how minimalistic it is. Okay, A Man Escaped, what is it about? A man trying to escape, and he does escape. A condemned man escapes, and he does escape. So, therefore, you in most of the publicity stills of the film, you see a very tight close up of the actor behind the bars or a rope hanging from the prison wall. Okay, a man escaping, trying to escape, and he is relentless. He does not talk too much. He has made a couple of friends in the prison, but there is not much dialogue. Okay. Concrete images. Remember when we were discussing Bresson, what did we talk about? His emphasis on images, concrete images. Okay. So, concrete image, a rope hanging down from the prison wall, a very concrete image. Prison dramas are of course quite common. We have a very popular prison drama, Shawshank Redemption, but then earlier we had Jacques Baker's The Hole and Genèse, A Song of Love, which preceded A Man Escaped. All these films along with A Man Escaped, The Hole and A Song of Love act as allegories of human suffering, just like Shawshank Redemption. It is not just about a man imprisoned, it is like an allegory that most of us suffer. The world is a prison. Now, O Hazard Balthazar, in English, the English title is just Balthazar, 1966. It follows the life of a donkey, but it is not a singing donkey, it is not the donkey from Shrek. Okay. It is a very spiritual kind of a donkey, and Bresson traces its life and its death, its life and its birth, its entire life from its birth to its death. And when it is a baby donkey, a couple of children in the village, they pour water on its head, and what is the indication here? Baptism. Okay, so, but the donkey is baptized. Remember, Bresson is a very Christian director, okay, and he says that all of us have to go through, I mean, it is just not fair that only humans deserve a certain kind of ritual. All living beings are equal in Bresson's eyes. And then we have that, and we follow the donkey's life. The movie is set, or the story is set in a French district. The donkey, several people change hands. So, he is owned by several people during the course of the movie, and the world is watched through the donkey's eyes. Now, donkey is a very common, very silly animal for most of us, but in Bresson, he is a philosopher, he is a narrator, he is the narrator of the movie. Okay. And there are many characters in the film. There is a 14-year-old girl, she is in love with someone, her parents. So, there are several people in the, there is a ringmaster, the donkey is also owned for a couple of months by a circus owner, and he trains the donkey to be a specialist in mathematics. He starts solving multiplication tables, etc. Okay, and he becomes a star donkey. So, all sorts of things happen to Balthazar. But and through the donkey's eyes, what does he see? A village full of weak, flawed and petty people. So, that is Bresson's take on humanity, that this is what people are all about. So, having a donkey is just a metaphor. It is the director looking very objectively at humankind. Okay, so what Bresson seems to suggest is that we are all Balthazars, we all suffer, okay, and the world will stay the way it is. Okay, what the basic idea is, no one is going to change for you. When Balthazar is beaten to death, the village idiot, the village drunk, a misfit, treats and nurses it back to health. Okay, so there is something, there is something redeeming even in the most hopeless of mankind, of people, the village drunk, the local drunk, whom everyone has written off. Okay, when he when the donkey dies, it goes back among a herd of sheep and dies peacefully. Okay, there is no melodrama, there is no loud music. Bresson doesn't ask us to weep at Balthazar's death. The donkey just dies very peacefully, their own business, a herd of sheep. Whatever they are doing, they continue. No one is affected. What is Bresson telling us? Yes, donkeys don't make a difference. Anyone's death does not make a difference. The world goes on. Okay. Do you remember that famous painting, Fall of Icarus? What is it about? Yeah, that's a story, but there is a painting as well by Bigel. Okay, I think it's a Dutch painter. What happens in the Fall of Icarus? Icarus has been given wings of wax and he is escaping to his freedom, but then because he has been given wings by his father, they are not his natural wings, remember, they are wings of wax. He is overconfident, full of joy, so he starts flying higher and higher and reaches very close to the sun. And then what happens when you are wearing wings of wax and you are so close to it? Melt and meets his death. So falls from his heights and splashes in the water, dies. Okay, there is a painting by Bigel depicting this sequence, this scene, Icarus drowning to his death. The world passes him by. Okay. What does it mean? Nobody is dead, however high and mighty you might be, it does not matter. That's Bresson's philosophy. Okay. Whatever may be our dreams, hopes, ambitions and plans, after all, after everything, we are going to be treated by the world the way it wants to treat us. Nothing is going to change. Any comments? Azar knows Balthazar, so would you like to add something to it? The girl, the love story that runs through the movie?
Yesterday I was watching Pickpocket.
Wow.
And
yes?
I was thinking the different ways he uses the camera to portray loneliness. Like in Pickpocket, it's all static camera mostly, I think, and small spaces. And but it's the opposite in Balthazar. The frame is, it covers more space.
Okay.
So like there are two ways to portray loneliness.
Loneliness. See, Balthazar after all is a donkey. The world is his home, and in Pickpocket, the man is confined by his own loneliness. Therefore, places are all, even his little room surrounded with books is almost like a prison. Yeah. And if you compare his room, Michel's room in Pickpocket, with the man who is condemned in A Man Escaped in prison, okay, they are quite alike. There is not much of a difference. What he is trying to tell us is, more or less all of us are in prison. It's in death that we find redemption of freedom. This is highly philosophical, as we have been talking about existentialist. The world is absurd, meaningless. Whatever we do is meaningless. Okay. So, that is the idea that is recurring in his films. I am going to read you, this is a book, The Films in My Life, and who is this? Francois Truffaut. Okay. Truffaut was one of the critics for Cahiers du Cinema. Remember that? André Bazin, Cahiers du Cinema. So, Truffaut was a writer, a critic. He had also written an essay. Yesterday we were talking about a certain quality of, a certain tendency of French cinema. I am just reading because he was a critic also, and Truffaut says of Bresson, in my opinion, A Man Escaped is not only Bresson's most beautiful film, but also the most important French film of the past 10 years. This essay was written in 1956. So, before I wrote the sentence, I listed on a piece of paper, and listen to this, all the films that have been made by Renoir, Max Ophuls, Cocteau, Jacques Tati, Astruc, Becker, Clouseau and Claire since 1946. So, I made a list of all these films, and I think A Man Escaped is the most beautiful film. Now, I regret that I wrote a few months ago, Bresson's theories are always fascinating, but they are so personal that they fit only him. The future existence of a Bresson school in inverted commas, would shake even his most optimistic observers. A conception of cinema that is so theoretical, mathematical, musical and above all aesthetic. So, that is one word, one adjective commonly applied to Bresson's cinema, aesthetic. could not give rise to a general insight. Today, I must disavow those sentences. A Man Escaped seems to me to reduce to nothing a certain number of accepted ideas that governed filmmaking all the way from script writing to direction. In many films nowadays, we find what is commonly called a touch of bravura or bravura. What that means is that the filmmaker was thought to be courageous, that he tried to surpass himself in one or two scenes. By this token, A Man Escaped, which is a stubborn film about stubbornness made by a stubborn native of the Auvergne, is the first movie of utter bravura. Let us try to see how it differs from all the others we have seen over the years. So, what he is saying in other words is, it's very often we describe directors as a brave director, right? It's a, he overwhelms you with his daring. Okay. Bresson in A Man Escaped emerges as the most daring of all directors. Okay. It's a very courageous movie, it's a very bold movie. Why? Because of its aesthetic style. So, that is what is your takeaway should be about or on Bresson. Most aesthetic, also innovative and courageous style, not in terms of boldness or depicting something very scandalous on screen, but the way he told his stories. Any questions? Please give it a thought for a few moments, and then we will skip to other area. Important director Orson Welles, and from the French masters now we are in Hollywood. Orson Welles and his which movie? Citizen Kane. Okay, this is something that we have been talking about quite frequently. We also watched a montage sequence from Citizen Kane a few days back. So, Citizen Kane 1941, and it was produced by Mercury and RKO Pictures. This is very important. You should know the names of all the studios. So, it starred many people, but now we can easily recognize Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten, directed by Orson Welles. It is often considered as the canonical text. Now, I want you to take a few moments and think of canon. What is a canon? Not a cannonball, but canonical texts. So, Citizen Kane as a canonical text, and my question to you is, what is a canon, and if you have to make your canon, then what would be a part of your canonical text in cinema? Don't give me a list of books. Please take 2 minutes to make your canon, canonical list. First you have to tell me what is a canon, and then give me a list of canonical films according to you. Please work, you can work in small groups or pairs. Paleri and Azhar, please get together, look at each other. Vedant, join someone. Hop over. What's a canon? I want a working definition of a canon, and I want a list of at least 5 canonical films according to you. You have given me once upon a time your favorite films. So, your favorite films need not be a part of any canon. All right, time up. At the back, what's a canon? You 3. The little girl in white, she'll tell us what's a canon.
I think if a movie or something, it pertains to certain set of rules.
Okay.
Or certain theory of movie.
Certain theory, certain set of rules, conforms to a certain set of rules. Okay. Anyone else? You have something to say?
Prototypical.
Okay.
Start a series of new trends to be followed by other filmmakers.
Okay, so something innovative. Yeah, a benchmark. Yes. Pulp Fiction, would you call it a canonical text? Vedant, do you have your list? Your group? Let's have a list. Canonical texts according to you people.
Matrix maybe.
Okay, Matrix. Fine. Okay, Paleri and Azhar and your friend, what do you have to say about canon and your list?
It's like the most accepted and admired,
Okay.
and also the most influential in cinema.
Fine. Okay. Give me your list. I think that will clear.
Birth of a Nation,
Okay.
Battleship Potemkin,
Okay.
Citizen Kane,
Mm.
Vertigo,
Mm.
then a trio of films, 400 Bros, Breathless, Hiroshima, Mon Amour.
Okay. By the French masters, new wave filmmakers. Okay. Canonical texts. Yes. 8.5. Fellini. Okay. Here. What is a canon?
Work or body of work that sets the foundation for other works that come after.
Hmm.
So, other than what was already said, they had Sholay, then what is
Iruvar. Sholay, Iruvar, yes. Think of something else, more international. Let me just define canon for you. All of you have some idea, but the dictionary defines a canon as a generally accepted rule, standard or principle by which something is judged. Okay? So, there are, so someone said rules and principles here. So, a list of books or other works that are generally accepted as the genuine work of a particular writer or as being important. Okay, so, important texts. Of course, dictionaries are giving us the word books. Okay, books are canonical, but we can even stretch the definition a little bit and say texts are canonical, and a set of films which are important because they adhere to certain standards and certain principles, as they rightly pointed out. Okay. Canon became an important term in Christian theological discourse in AD 90 with the establishment of the Hebrew biblical canon, and whatever falls outside canon are apocryphal and non-authentic. So, these are the words you should remember. Canon authenticates, canon validates. Now, canon as a theory or as a term is much contested, like every theory, and there has to be some contest. You can't blindly accept any concept or term or theory. So, canon is a much contested, much debated term. Who decides? Okay? He may say matrix, you may say Sholay, okay. But who decides? Is there a touch of subjectivity? Yes. If you look at now seminal film critics, and I can only talk about the most well known ones. Okay, so there is Pauline Kael. Are you aware of Pauline Kael? Okay, Pauline Kael from Hollywood was a critic who would tell us what to watch, and her views were so important that she could make or mar careers, actors, directors, screenwriters, etc., etc. Okay. Most people who would read at least film magazines or reviews, they would go by her word. So, that is, yeah, and people like Pauline Kael had the authority to create a list of canonical texts. More accessible, Roger Ebert. Okay, he always tells you what to watch. 100 best movies. Absolutely, volume 1, volume 2, great movies, Roger Ebert. Okay, there are, and in each volume there are 100 movies. So, Roger Ebert telling us what to watch. Okay, there is a book called 1001 movies to watch before you die. That means don't dare die before watching these movies. So, every once in a while you get a list of, or a collection of such books where you are told what to watch. Now, here you can please focus on this. What is it called? The greatest movies ever. The greatest movies ever. What is this book doing? And creating a set of canonical texts. Okay, the greatest movies. So, this is a canon. Okay, and the book is written by people who are considered authority on film writing. The Little Black Book of Movies. There is a similar book floating around somewhere, the Little Black Book of Books also, but here I am showing you the Little Black Book of Movies. Which movie is this from? Silence of the Lambs, canonical text. Okay. So, what are we doing here now? We are looking, and the tagline is over a century of the greatest films, stars, scenes and speeches and events that rocked the movie world. Okay, so they are telling us these are the movies that you should be watching, and you will have camp here, you will have cult here, okay. But they are all part of a certain canon. So, canons are those which adhere to certain principles and which are considered authentic by whatever standard. In literature, for example, it is inconceivable for any anthology to omit Shakespeare or Homer or Tolstoy if they are giving you a list of 101 books to read before you die. And how can you not have Shakespeare, right? So, Shakespeare becomes a canon. Okay. Iliad and Odyssey, you have to read, otherwise you are not educated enough. James Joyce's Ulysses, you have to read, okay, if you want to be taken seriously by a certain group of people, canonical literature. Tolstoy, of course, Tolstoy is a great entertainer, also a great storyteller, so easy to read. Anna Karenina, War and Peace, wonderful books, part of a canon. For example, in the 18th century, you had someone like Samuel Johnson, Dr. Samuel Johnson, who included 52 writers who constitute the canon of English verse, and it was called Lives of the Most Eminent Poets. So, what was Johnson doing? Creating a canon. It was one of the foremost attempts in creating a canon. Okay. So, remembrance of things past, okay, by who? By Prue. Divine Comedy by Dante, Paradise Lost by Milton, and Moby Dick by Herman Melville, and all kinds of literary anthologies, and again film anthologies. There are certain movies, so they rightly mentioned a list of movies which are part of the canon. There cannot be any anthology of cinema without the mention of Birth of a Nation, the trilogy 400 Blows and Breathless, 8 and a Half. What else did you mention? Battleship Potemkin, Gone with the Wind, Citizen Kane, perhaps Ben-Hur. Yeah. So, these are the movies. Contemporary, I mean, by contemporary is a very loose word. So, you can even go back to the 70s, contemporary. Okay. So, if something which happened during the last 40 to 50 years. So, canon, if you look at the contemporary canon, let us not go back to Intolerance and Birth of a Nation and Gone with the Wind. If you look at the movies made during the 30-40 years, last 30-40 years, what will you think? Raging Bull, Scorsese's, okay, you will definitely think of Scorsese's Raging Bull, not necessarily Gangs of New York, right. So, Raging Bull has become a canon for a set of particular reasons, some principles that a director or filmmaker has to adhere to. Matrix, yes, a part of contemporary, yes. Godfather, of course, it goes without saying. Godfather is a very strong presence in any anthology of cinema. Okay. Brian De Palma's Scarface, yes, it is. Chinatown, Polanski's, part of a canon. Well, Die Hard is a different kind of a film. I can see a lot of smiles here when you say Die Hard, Terminator, Judgment 2. Yeah, it's a different kind of a canon, but not necessarily. I don't think that they will find their way into Roger Ebert's 100 movies that you must watch before you die. I doubt it. Yes, I would.
Handheld shots.
Yes, definitely, definitely. City of God. It has to be a part of any canon. If a book, a recent book comes out, then I am very sure it will be inclusive of City of God. Groundhog Day is a contemporary classic. Yeah, can you think of anything more? Any other movie?
Reservoir Dogs. Reservoir Dogs.
What's that?
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs. Okay, we are more interested in Pulp Fiction. Okay, so Pulp Fiction is a canonical text which will always be a part of any cinema anthology. Reservoir Dogs may not be. Okay, it doesn't have. I think so. Yes, Aliens would. Yeah, Jaws. Jaws was first of a kind.
But when you create a canon, aren't you inherently saying that some kinds of movies are superior to
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So, canons, therefore, I am saying are interesting to analyze as they dictate you. The word is dictate. They are telling you what to watch and what to teach. If Aisha doesn't teach Citizen Kane, then there will be a question mark on teaching. Okay, how dare you call yourself and call your course film theory and practice when you didn't even touch upon Citizen Kane or Godard or Truffaut. Okay, so it dictates you. So I cannot, however much I may love Reservoir Dogs. Okay, but when you are looking at a 40 hours course, then you have to sacrifice Reservoir Dogs, but you cannot dare to sacrifice The Godfather, okay, Citizen Kane, Pulp Fiction. Okay, they become the canon. Chinatown. I was once teaching it was a sub-module in film theory and practice. Very often I change the syllabus. So, there was a time when I was teaching city and cinema, how city is expressed in cinema, and which movies do you think I would have looked at? Paris, Texas? Paris Je t'aime, yeah, anthology, good, very nice. It gives you Paris in its various manifestations, right? New York anthology, that the movie yesterday I was talking about, Coppola, Woody Allen and Martin Scorsese's life lessons. Okay, Manhattan, again by Woody Allen. Manhattan is a beautiful depiction of a certain part of New York. There are certain, if you are looking at a module like city cinema and you are teaching a set of movies like Paris Je t'aime, like New York stories, then why not Chinatown? That is a question, that is a very valid question. Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas. Okay, that is another very important movie if you want to look at how cities and spaces are reflected in cinema. Wings of Desire, again a German movie by Wim Wenders. Okay, watch those movies. Wings of Desire. There was a movie, Hollywood movie called City of Angels, not City of God, City of Angels, Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, okay, which is a remade version of Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders. Okay, so Canon tells you what to teach and what to read and what to watch. So you are absolutely right. Who creates it and do you need to adhere to it? Yes, for some reason, if you call yourself a student of literature, there is no way that you can ignore Shakespeare and Dante. If you call yourself a student of cinema, there is no way you can ignore D.W. Griffiths and Lumiere brothers. Okay, so they are part of your canon. Now, Citizen Kane was marketed as the classic story of power and the press, how newsprint gives you power, media lends power, and has often been called or hailed as the greatest film of all time. Okay? Canon. There is no list of greatest all time movies which is ever completed without the mention of Citizen Kane. And let me tell you, Citizen Kane was not a blockbuster, it was not a mega hit, it was not a money spinner. Whose life was it based on? A media magnet. A media magnet. William Randolph Hearst. William Randolph Hearst, and it was based on his life, and William Randolph Hearst did his best to see that the movie doesn't last in theaters, and he had the power, he had the muscle, he could do that. And then of course the narrative, which was way too complicated for those times. And if you watch, how many of you have seriously watched Citizen Kane? That's good, that's very impressive. Okay, Azhar, have you? Okay, please do watch it, and I want you to pay attention to the first 10 minutes when you are taken across what? Xanadu. Okay. So, as Charles Foster Kane, the protagonist, he is dying, he is on his deathbed, and we are taken through his estate, and it is called Xanadu. And while we are admiring the luxuries of Xanadu, okay, there are lots of things happening there. Okay. Watch it, watch the way in which Orson Welles demolishes all the traditional narrative structures. And how does he do it? He is not being very realistic, in fact it is very subjective camera movement. Okay, the way he treats the spaces is extremely subjective. For instance, there is a particular light, okay, in the middle of a room, and the light stays in one corner of the screen, whereas you are treated to his golf courses, to his gondolas, to his zoos. He owns animals, right, on all a part of his Xanadu estate, while the same light, a bulb hangs in the middle of the screen. So, golf course, I mean the bulb cannot be in the middle of a golf course, right, or in the middle of a swimming pool. What is it trying to tell you? Very interesting, there is no fixed answer to that. Okay. So, often termed or often declared the best movie of all part. So, it is a very strong of all time. So, it is a very strong part of any film canon. And Sight and Sound, what is Sight and Sound? It is a film magazine, very scholarly magazine. So, it is not one of those yellow rags which talks about gossip about actors and their businesses, but it is a very serious, very academic kind of a journal. It is not a journal, it is a magazine, but it has the respectability of a journal, academic journal. So, Sight and Sound has rated it 4 times as the best movie ever made, okay, which is a huge praise by any standard. Any comments you would like to make on Canon, on Citizen Kane? Any questions?
In last year's fall, it became Vertigo.
In last year's fall, in which magazine? Sight and Sound? Okay, so Sight and Sound keeps on conducting these polls, which are very important. They do tell us what to watch, which is the best movie ever. You know why? Because now there is a tendency to look at the body of work by a director, and Hitchcock any day will score over Orson Welles, because how many of you remember any other movie by Orson Welles apart from Citizen Kane? But Hitchcock, even in your sleep you can mention at least 5 films, isn't it true? Yeah, North by Northwest, Rear Window, that nice movie with Cary Grant and Grace Kelly in French Riviera, To Catch a Thief. Okay, To Catch a Thief, Notorious, it's a spy movie, it's a thriller. Strangers on a Train, Psycho of course, and then Vertigo. But Orson Welles, Touch of Evil, yeah, great movie, but not a phenomenal success. Magnificent Ambersons, again a magnificent movie, but not a success at all. highly innovative, the way he told his narratives. Chimes at Midnight, which was a retelling of which story? Chimes at Midnight. Macbeth. Yeah, that's Orson Welles' take on Shakespeare's Macbeth. So, he has made movies which are known basically to film scholars and film cine enthusiasts, but Hitchcock is well known. So, naturally, I am very sure 20 years from today, Pulp Fiction will be the most admired film of all time. Why not? And where did Godfather stand here in this list?
I don't think it's in the
Sight
top
and
10.
Sound.
I don't think it's.
That's very strange. That's very strange. What do you remember other titles? Because whatever
I
list.
think Tokyo Story.
Tokyo Story.
Ozu was second.
By
I think.
Ozu. Okay. So look
The-
how things change, how canons change. Now, if Tokyo Story by Ozu occupies the second place, then it's very interesting. And who was it? Orson Welles himself, he was no admirer, and I am saying no admirer of these people, like the French masters or the Italian neorealists and the Japanese greats. He said that I absolutely don't understand what they make. And there he says there is a school of boredom, okay, to which these films belong. And most of the time these people come to me, and he cited Kayerdu cinema. You remember we have been talking about it, and he said those journalists come to me and start asking very highbrow questions and expect me to give highbrow answers. I can't discuss that. I mean, they want me to talk about cinema as an art. I mean, what the hell is that? Okay, he says I have absolutely no clue about what it means, but I do give interviews to those people because they like me so much. I can't say no to that's his. So Welles as a critic, he had absolutely no regards for the Japanese masters, the Ozus and the Fellinis and all those people of the world. Okay, he called them boring downright. Yeah. So you must read his biography, it's very interesting. So thank you so much. We will meet tomorrow and continue with Citizen Kane.